one of the very, very important chazals that I'm certain you've heard of. I'm sure you've heard of this chazal. And it's a chazal that's very freaky. It's a very, I don't know, it's me'orer. It awakens a lot of wondering. Because I think, I'm just, because Judy's sitting here. I remember one time I said this in the shiur a few weeks ago. I walked into the office in your home, and Shalom was sitting there, and he just said to me, he looked very bothered, and he said, I don't know, I'm learning of a lot of people that are just having a hard time just waiting. They're ready. They're a lot of people that are just they've had enough of this waiting. Then we hear a chazal like this that says that Mashiach's going to come in a door that's either kulo zakai or kulo chayav. What does that mean? Mashiach will come in a generation that is either fully worthy or is fully not worthy. That's the pshat of it. Okay, what do you do with the chazal like that? What do you do with that? What do you do with that? You either you could either make sure everyone now is signed up to be a shliach, and our whole life right now is just a completely different set of order, and it's I don't want to bank on waiting for a dor shekulo chayav. I don't want to bank on, let's see how bad it could really get, and then Mashiach will come, right? On the other hand, the overwhelming notion of this chazal is, I have to make sure that everyone is zakai, that everyone becomes someone who's worthy of Mashiach. What do you do with the chazal like this? And this is a famous chazal from the Gemara in Sanhedrin, I believe it is, where you're just in Sanhedrin, you're trying to understand what does this mean? Dor shekulo zakai and dor shekulo chayav. Thank God for the Baal Shem Tov. I mean, I could say thank God for the Baal Shem Tov about anything. Thank God for the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh. But when it comes to Mashiach, oh my God, and when it comes to understanding certain Gemaras, I mean, mamish, thank God for the Baal Shem Tov. Thank God for Chassidus. I don't know what we would do. We would either really try to make sure things are as bad as possible, or we would the manner in which we would get everyone's act together would be frightening, because it's coming from a place of being alarmed and scared and anxious and nervous. That wouldn't work either. There's two ways of saying Torahs, and I'll give you an example. I think this is what it boils down to, how the Baal Shem Tov saved our life. I heard a vort this last week from a Rav, a very big tzaddik, but the way he said it could be such a beautiful vort, but it was fire and brimstone. I'm going to tell you it the other way. I'm going to tell you it the way that I want to say it over, okay? And then I'll tell you it the way that I heard it being given over. I think this will be a great example of how to learn these types of Gemaras that discuss the coming of the Mashiach in a manner that we could do something with, as opposed to being frozen. The vort is like this, from this last Shabbos. Yaakov Avinu was busy making lentil soup. Why was he making lentil soup? Everyone knows. Because his father was sitting Shiva, because Avram Avinu had just died. His grandfather just passed away. Why did he make lentil soup? So Rashi gives us over there a very clear answer, that an adashim, lentils are round, just like the circle of life, it's round. Then there was another vort, and this is a beautiful vort. It's that when, something that's round doesn't have a mouth. There's no peh. And you're saying the lentil doesn't have any opening over here, because really an avel has nothing to say other than just Baruch Dan Emes and Mekabel Ladin Be'ahava. And in Avel, someone that's in mourning, all they're allowed to do, they're not allowed to say Shalom, and they're not allowed to say Torah. And really, what else were our mouths brought into this world for, other than to greet people, to say Shalom, and to learn the word of Hashem? So that's why he was making lentil soup. That's a beautiful vort, no? You want to hear it? Now you want to hear the way I heard it? And what do we do with our lives, with our mouths? We're always blabbing around and not using it in the right way. Comes an Avel, has to deal with his din in his life, and therefore now he can't say Shalom, and he can't learn Torah, because what else are you doing with your mouth in this world? One, you understand, look, one is I could do something with it. Wow, I'm actually empowered by a voice like that. I want to use my mouth better now. Actually, I actually want to make sure that like my mouth is being used in a way that I feel like it's chashuv, it's justified, it's bringing a sanctification in God's name in this world. And gewalt, am I going to greet shalom? Am I going to say shalom to every person that I meet? Right? When it's used like that, that's a way of I have something to do with it. The other way, so go back to the Gemara, Mashiach's going to come in a door that either everyone is holy and worthy and deserving, or until you're all just about to go to hell. What am I going to do with that? So the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe will give us some type of tools as to what to do with a Gemara like this. Because this is a statement that we have to understand in the context of our learning about how and when Mashiach is going to be coming and in what type of generation. Because if I ask you just now, tell me something, is our door that we're in right now, is this a door shekulo zakai or a door shekulo chayav? What would you say? What's the status of the door?
Can you translate those two words?
Worthy or not worthy?
I feel like Hashem is pushing us to be worthy. Like we were not being worthy, and I feel like we're in the process of being pushed to be worthy.
Okay. But if I had to ask you this morning at 9:30, Rosh Chodesh Kislev, what's the status of the door?
Well, we can't. Well, I mean, we're in process.
7-7.
So
50-50.
So if you say we're in process, and baya, but what are you saying about the possibility of Mashiach coming today if you're saying you're in process?
Okay, so Mashiach could come at any point. That's not like Mashiach could. He's ready.
Mashiach's ready?
It's up to us.
But if the Gemara says Mashiach's going to come in a generation that's either kulo zakai or kulo, obviously I'm playing devil's advocate with what you're saying. If we're saying Mashiach's going to come in a generation that's either fully worthy or fully unworthy, but we're saying, okay, but we're in a process, and it'll take time till we get to the status, hopefully, of which one? Zakai. Then what does that? Just want to make sure we're on the same page.
If you look at it, it's like 0 or 1. So if we're not Zakai, then we're not. So in that case, you could come today too.
Right. But there's the concept of being.
But there's so many holy people that are Zakai.
Right.
As a whole, though. As a unit.
Listen to him. I'm honestly, I'm messing with all of you right now. Obviously, you understand. Like, I'm not messing. I'm trying to just. Yeah, that's all it is. I'm just trying to show, like, these are inyanim. It's not all. When you learn these things on the outside, it is all or nothing. That's what I'm trying to show you. When you learn these Torahs without the Baal Shem Tov, it's all or nothing, and it's pachad ayom benayra. When we're trying to learn with Torahs and Chassidus, is that even if it's all or nothing, there's another way of looking at that all or nothing. And that's what we have to do today. Okay, we'll try to do as much as we can today. Dor Shekulo Zakai at the bottom of page 86. Let's see. Let's leave it to today. אחת מאמרות חז"ל הנפוצות ביותר על הגאולה היא זו של רבי יוחנן. רבי יוחננ's statement in the Gemara, אין בן דוד בא אלא בדור שכולו זכאי או כולו חייב. This is a Torah, this is a statement by Rabbi Yochanan. What does this mean? משמעות הדברים הפשוטה היא שהמשיח יבוא באחד משני המצבים הקיצוניים דווקא. Mashiach's going to come in one of the kitzoni usually means radical, but it means like either all or nothing. O kasher atov yagia l'sio, or when the good reaches its peak, or God forbid, kasher hara yagia l'sio, or when the bad reaches its peak as well. Ulam, and that is, by the way, why when we have like Simchas Torah last year, why was there such a feeling of Mashiach must be here? Because how much worse could it have gotten? How much worse could it have gotten? So therefore we've learned a few months ago, that's why when these catastrophes and these pogroms and these horrible moments take place in our lives, right away there's a hitnotzitzut or shel Mashiach, because we're saying, hey, maybe this is what Rabbi Yochanan meant when it said kulo chayav, because hey, look what's going on. If we were really gewalt and things were really filled with licht and light, and then maybe a thing like this wouldn't have happened. Ulam advarim dorshim beirur, but we need to clarify this statement of Rabbi Yochanan. When will bad completely be removed from the world? Only after the redemption. like when we say kasher et ruach hatuma ahavir min haaretz, like Zechariah Navi says, when the spirit of impurity I will be removing from the land. V'ilu ad az, but until that moment, adayin yishaer ra ba'olam, there will still be bad in the world. As echi tachen efo dor shekulo zakai. How could there even be a situation of a generation that's fully worthy if we even mention, if we know that bad in its full demeanor will only be removed once Mashiach comes, when Geula comes. What kind of what he's saying is, what kind of a mitziut is bichlal, the dor shekulo zakai? What does that even mean? If you understand, if bad essentially will only be fully removed once the Geula happens. So how do you describe, bless you, how do you even describe this situation? This.
There's no way we could be zakai.
Very good.
If we have to wait.
Very good. Let's say that that's what he means. Could be. ומצד שני, איך ייתכן דור שכולו חייב? But on the other hand, how could you say that there's a door that's fully chayav, meaning that it's fully, when we say not chayav over here means like, listen, you've been a bad boy, you've been a bad girl. Huh? Guilty. וכי אפשר לעלות על הדעת דור שאין בו כלל לומדי תורה ומקיימי מצוות, as bad as things can get, as horrible as you want to say Am Yisrael was during Simchas Torah, there were shuls that they were dancing while the bombs were coming down. There were shuls where there was Kabbalah Sol Malchus Shemaim. I was in the middle of doing Birkas Kohanim. I standing next to my father doing Birkas Kohanim when the first siren came down here in Efrat. So, can you imagine a situation that a door shekulo chayav, as bad as things were? You think during the Holocaust, how many stories do we have? Like that beautiful sefer from Yafa Eliach. What's it called? Hasidic Tales of the Holocaust. You have all these stories going on in there. Like, you can't say they're kulo chayav because we know these things were taking place. Kloisenberger Rebbe, the Blucher, not even the Rebbes, mainly the Rebbes. But even in a situation where you may say, this is probably what the Gemara means when it says it's a door that's completely guilty. Wait a second. You have some Ehrlich Yidden that in the moments of utmost darkness, we're gewalt, we're shining. So how could it be? How do we understand? Did we get the terminology right or not? Okay? So the Maharsha masbir. The Maharsha explains like this: Shtei afshariyot halalu makbilot lemaaseh lishtei afshariyot hageula sheuzkeru kodem lachen b'Gemara. These two possibilities are makbil. They correspond to two different possibilities of redemption that were mentioned before in the Gemara, in the same sugya in Daf Tzadik Zayin Amud Bet in Sanhedrin. What does Rabbi Eliezer say? So now let's learn Rabbi Eliezer's statement. Im Yisrael osim tshuva nig'alin. Ze kulo zakai. Am Yisrael tshuva me'atzmo. Niya zakai bezoche miyad legeula. Rabbi Eliezer describes a scenario that if all of Am Yisrael does tshuva, we become redeemed. This is what it means, kulo zakai, that it's fully worthy. Am Yisrael does tshuva from itself, and we become zakai. We become worthy, and we merit the geula immediately. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, she'im Am Yisrael lo yaseh tshuva me'atzmo, that if this doesn't happen, that I don't do tshuva from my own, from myself, HaKadosh Baruch Hu ma'amid lahen melech shegzerotav kashot kehaman, v'Yisrael osin tshuva. If it's not going to happen intuitively from our own, what ends up happening is that God places for them a king whose decrees are as evil and as hard as Haman HaRasha, and then Am Yisrael will do tshuva. That's what it means, kulo chayav, he says. That everyone is guilty, and then they have to do it tshuva this way. Which means Am Yisrael mitzad atzmo nimtza b'shefel hamadrega, that Am Yisrael on its own is the lowest it could be. And then, God forces us to return to Him, and to be worthy of redemption. V'liot ra'ui legeula. Okay, let's unpack this for a second. Both according to the Rebbe Eliezer and Rebbe Yeshua, what's the end game? What's the end game in both instances? Tshuva's right before the end game. Mashiach, Geula. The end game, okay, and it's preceded by Tshuva. And then one step back, what's the difference?
Where is it coming from?
Where is it coming from? Okay, so now we're understanding it a little bit clear. Zot omeret, there's an emunah that we have in nitzchiyut of Am Yisrael, in the eternity of Am Yisrael. Tshuva will be done. The only question is, how are you going to be waiting for, God forbid, an outside, an exterior evil force that forces you to get your act together? Or are you coming from a place of within, like, wow, Kadosh Baruch Hu, look at my life, look at what you've given me. I want to honor this gift called life, this gift called being a Jew, and I'm going to take it to the next level. According to this Gemara, Kulo Zakai means that I become worthy of Geula by my own awakening. Kulo Chayav, that everyone's guilty, means the other side of the story. That it's only because of Rishayim Arunim from the outside that wake me up and say, hey, brother, sister, get your act together. And, you haven't been getting your act together, so I'm going to make it really, really, really bad for you. Now, we've seen this past in the history. What's the first time we see tshuva being done because of the gzerot, because of the decrees of an evil king? Before. Mitzrayim. Vayizaku vatal shavatam el Elokim. Paro makes the work so hard. And what do Yidden start doing? Tshuva. They start screaming to Hashem. They start davening. They begin their tshuva process like that. Now, do you have an example of the first scenario? Does anyone have an example of the first scenario of what Rebbe Eliezer says? That if we do tshuva... Huh?
Maybe the Olim of Ezra and Nehemiah, where they themselves wanted to come back to Israel to rebuild.
Could be.
In Masechet Sota, doesn't it say, like, the whole, like, what's going to happen in time of Mashiach? It says that, like, the rulers, no one's going to believe them. It's a little hard to think that's going to be Sakai.
Yeah, that's pretty hard.
They won't be able to trust their own people.
Right. I mean, one would say like this, maybe post-1967, there was this hitorut after such a miracle happened, where the tshuva movement begins in its like global way, right? And then what ends up happening is at that moment between 1967 to 1973, we were in a shtickle state of euphoria. Those of you that were around can tell us about that, not to date anyone, but those of you that were around can tell some of us chaver what that was like. And then from that place, that's a hitorut of tshuva that's coming from a place of kulo. Again, I can't say kulo because it didn't sweep the whole Jewish world, but that's the type of tshuva that's zakai. Right? Now, that's why I didn't say kulo. Exactly. But now we're in a situation, so where are we now? I'm much more interested in now than even Yetzias Mitzrayim. I don't know. I'm much more interested in how we look at now, how we look at our door today. So we experienced a massive sense of close to being kulo chayav on a certain spiritual level. And the world feels like this. I'm talking to Chevra and Chutz La'aretz. They're way more petrified of the situation in the world than we are here. Way more. Way more. I had a friend reached out last week from somewhere in the East Coast. My God, the fear and terror in this message was a petrifying one that very much would fall under we're probably in a dor shekulo chayav. And here, us Yidden in Eretz Yisrael, we're looking around and sing Ahavas Yisrael like never before. Ignore that garbage called media. They're portraying such a tiny percent of what's really going on in the Am. We're more in love with each other than we ever were. Bemet. the Chayalim HaGiborim on their shoulders, the worlds of Mesiras Nefesh, the gates of Ahavas Chinam that they opened up, both those that lost their lives and those that lost parts of their limb, of their body, in order for us to tap into this. It's like been like this like never before. So it's a very interesting question when you ask yourself, what do you think where do you think we're at right now? Are we closer to how Rebbe Eliezer explains Kulo Zakai, or are we closer to the way Rabbi Yeshua explains Kulo Chayav? It's very interesting. Let's see how he continues to develop this. And now he brings us to the Maharal, Maharal mi Prague. We've done this before, the Maharal. Not this piece, but we've learned from the Maharal before in this Sefer. Maharal mi Prague masbir be'ofen ma'amik yoter et mashma'ut ma'amaro shel Rabbi Yochanan. So the Maharal is going to explain a little bit clearer what Rabbi Yochanan was saying. Remember, Rabbi Yochanan was the one that said, Mashiach comes in a dor shekulo zakai or kulo chayav. Biat HaMashiach היא מציאות חדשה ושלמות חדשה בעולם. The arrival, the coming of Mashiach is a completely new reality and a new sense of completion that takes place in the world. על כן, אין היא יכולה לבוא כאשר העולם נמצא במצבו הרגיל. If that's the case, he can't come when the world is olam keminago noheg, where the world is as normal, it's in its normal state of being. אלא רק באחת משתי האפשרויות. Can only come in one of the two possibilities. O she'ador niya dor zakai, either the generation becomes a dor that's worthy, she'igia el pisgat hashlemut, that it reached this epic moment, the height, the peak of shlemus, ubekach na'asa ra'ui li'itgalut hachadasha shel Mashiach, and through this it becomes worthy of the new revelation of living with the Mashiach in this world. O she'uniya dor chayav, or that it became a generation that's unworthy, that's guilty. שהידרדר לשפל התחתון ביותר לריקנות מוחלטת, that has seeped down to the lowest level of complete and utter emptiness. דבר המאפשר לבנות על קרקע נקייה את העולם החדש של ימות המשיח. As bad as that is, the Maharal says when you go that low, you're basically about to come to complete demolition, and like that, there's basically like mowing the lawn. I once had this really weird interaction with someone that was trying to convince Bina and I many years ago to move somewhere and be the Rav and Rebbitzin there. And I said, you really don't want me to do it. They said, why? I said, because the first thing I would do would be to completely mow the lawn. Totally. I mean, you're right around there anyway, like everything has to be mowed. Not understand what I'm saying. I'm not a gardener. What I mean is like the situation here is so schwach and like you're almost there. So the only, if you that's what I would do. Like the first thing I would do is just finish that last level of and then start from scratch. He's like, yeah, not so sure you're the guy for the job. Like, maybe we'll talk to someone else that doesn't think that we've reached here Shefel HaMadrig, the lowest of the low. But what the Maharal is saying is that when you reach the lowest of the low, you're right, you're much closer to starting everything from scratch because so much has been demolished and destroyed like that. But now next page, now Chassidus, now the Alter Rebbe. Torah Chassidus Masbira, Chassidus explains to us, שהגאולה באה כאשר הושלמה העבודה של בירור הטוב מהרע. Why are Hasidim, specifically Lubavitcher Shluchim, and today this weekend is their weekend, this is the Kinus HaShluchim. I can't even imagine what it's like for them this year, after last week, what the Kinus HaShluchim is like this year. I mean, they had this also I'll tell you exactly when, 16 years ago, when the Holtzbergs were killed. It's exactly the same time. Huh? Yeah, it's exactly the same time. A chassid is committed to his shlichus. What's his shlichus in the world? Birur hara mehatov. Where does the word birur come from in Hilchos Shabbos? Borer. What does borer mean? What's the exact word in English? Sifting. Birur means to sift. It means God placed in this world good and bad. That's the way. There was a snake in the Garden of Eden before there was any Avera. You understand? This world, even in the Garden of Eden, the way that God created this world is to do some work, and that is avodat haberurim, the work of sifting through. If everything was just good, you wouldn't have to be in this world. You wouldn't have to appear as a body. You would just stay as a neshama in the olamot elyonim. Our whole inyan over here in this world is levarer et hara, et hatov me'ara, to sift through and be able to distinguish, differentiate, which, according to Rashi, kedusha means to separate between holy and unholy. Tameh v'tahor, all these things. This is what we're busy doing in this world. Second line, avodatenu hi lehafrid et hara shenit arbev batov. It's to separate the bad that got mixed up with the good. Ulatziv gvulot brurim benehem, and to set up clear boundaries between the two, which is the opposite of what the modern state of Israel has done with the enemy. Kol od hatov ve'ara me'urbavim ze beze, as long as the good of bad and bad are mixed with each other, en hageula yichola lavo. This means, if you have, as a life goal, chosen to accept to live with bad, with the tuma within you, hatzlacha. But that's not a geula dika consciousness. That's not it. The way Eretz Yisrael is today is, I'm sorry, it's nothing close to the karka being ready for the geula to come, as long as we have accepted as a people made up entities that don't exist, that are like cancer cells spreading throughout the body called Am Yisrael. It's not a geula dika consciousness of why we came back after 2,000 years. It has nothing to do with the story of Am Yisrael. It may be a story of a new nationalism called Israelism. It has nothing to do with Am Yisrael. Nothing. In fact, it's the opposite. Ha'efech hagamur. You know who knew this clearly? Sarah Imenu. Sarah Imenu told Avram Avinu, Garesh na es ben ha'ama azos. And we don't look at Sarah and call her a racist. Does anyone have any... I mean, you know what? I shouldn't say that. Who knows what people are saying? I don't even know what people are saying in certain places. Maybe they learned Parshas Vayera and they're like, wow, what a bigot she was. What a racist Sarah Imenu was. No, there's Havdalah. There's clearly separating between bad and good. En malasot. The deeper question is, what makes us think? What is it in our being that has a hard time with doing birur, with sifting through bad and good?
Ideally, we want to see the Gula consciousness now, like the whole peace now, you know.
Right.
We want that idealism.
Right.
And so it's ideally we want everybody to be good, and so therefore this is of the left.
Right.
They want to. It's good intentions. It is good in Gula consciousness in their subconscious, but it doesn't come out that way.
Right. It's not olam hazeh.
Skip the step of birur.
Right. Right. It's geula which, but that means that if you skip the step of birur, then what was the reason you came to this world? The avoda of this world is birur. I mean, that's a big limud zchus, what you're saying. Very, very much. It's a very big limud zchus. And I'm sure it's true by many people that hold like this. Listen, the example I give is an easy one for us to grapple, to do something with, because it's our parsha. It's what we're in this world. But the birur is not just about the way we are with enemies within. It's about bichlal, life, in general. Avodat haberurim, sifting through what's ikar, what's tafel, what's important, what's not important. The greatest bracha anyone ever gave me on a birthday was I should be blessed, that I should be connected and clear as to what's important in life, and to not have any connection and not hold on to things that aren't really important, and to know the difference between the two. That's the avodat haberurim. That's the avodah of sifting through things. Like it's Sunday morning. It's the first day. It's the last day of Cheshvan. It's Rosh Chodesh Kislev, right? It's new. It's chalot chadashot. Rabbi Nachman says Rosh Chodesh is always a zman of tshuva. Why is it? Because I do tshuva when I think that it's possible that yesterday doesn't have to dictate to me my today. So there's a Yit'orut of tshuva. So right now it's Rosh Chodesh Kislev. We're saying, okay, Ribono Shel Olam, I want to look at this next month with eyes of Geula. So what does that mean? Hashem, I need avodat habirurim. I need the work of sifting through life, that it should be clear to me. I need help. I need help to do it. I need like strength and ratzon. I mean, that's really a big one. Please bless me with ratzon, with the will, with wanting to do this type of work. Avodat habirurim. Because he says over here, based on the Alter Rebbe, as long as the good and the bad are me'urbavim zeh bezeh, you've set up a situation, as long as the good and bad are completely mixed up with each other, as a lechatchila even, what are you blocking the path towards? Ena geula yichola lavo. Hi tavo be'achat mishtei ha'efsharuyot. O she'atov yidche legamre et hara, or that the good will completely push away the bad, and that's a dor zakai. Or she'ara yigbar v'yishtalet al hatov, or that the bad will overcome and take over and control the good. That's a dor chayav. V'az yavidu HaKadosh Baruch Hu kalil. And then that's a bad. You know what that means? Az yavidu HaKadosh Baruch Hu kalil.
Is that even possible?
Ki'ilu. You know what that means?
No.
It means,
Well, there's Hashem completely.
right, which we know is not possible. Like, it's not fully possible. It'll seem like that's what's happening, though.
Sounds awful.
Beyond awful. So, now, let's just stop for a second and we'll remind you of something. Okay? All this is true in the level of our avoda in this world. But there's something that could happen in any given second that we don't bank on. And yet, while learning about Geula, you always have to remember. This is true. This is emet la'amito. But, in the same instance, Hashem in a second can send Mashiach. Why? Because God can do anything. It's just the game that we're living in is working with the rules of the game. So a shliach is going out every day. He's not under the assumption that if he gets 3 more people to put on tefillin and 4 more women to light Shabbos candles, we finish the game. There's still more people to do. There's still more hungry souls that are longing for light. I still got to do that. But I walk with the sense of, but I know that in the same instance, while I'm committed to my shlichus, Hashem can say, Kinderlach, enough. Yalla. Higiya zman geulatchem. This last Erev Shabbos Chabura with the men, we were learning about Tosefet Shabbos. But what's the Indian? You know, the way we keep Shabbos is not 24 hours, right? How long is Shabbos? That's for Litvaks. How long is Shabbos? Like 28, 29 hours, right? Obviously? No? 26. Tosefet Shabbos, meaning is this additional, the Or HaChaim HaKadosh says a beautiful thing. The truth is, no one knows exactly when Shabbos comes in. It's one of these inyanim that you don't know exactly the second Shabbos officially comes in. So we have this Zman. See, if Shabbos really came in at 4:18, then how could you allow another 18 minutes of someone to do something that's a Chilul Shabbos? Because it's not really a Chilul Shabbos. You understand? So but we don't bank on it. But we don't bank on it. We don't look at the. I mean, I don't know if you do. I hope you don't. You don't look at the Shabbos times and say, "Oh, Shabbos is 4:20," meaning Shabbos is 4:38. We don't. That's not how we work, right? So the Or HaChaim HaKadosh says, you know why we did this Inyan of Tosefet Shabbos aside from the simple matter that we don't know exactly what it is that so the Ribono Shel Olam can look at us and say, wow, they're bringing Shabbos in early. I'm going to bring in Yom Shekulo Shabbos early. I'm going to bring in Mashiach Zeit. I'm going to bring Mashiach time in early as well, which I thought was such a beautiful idea, such a beautiful concept. The hard part is that what do people look like in the state of the time when we bring in Shabbos? Let's admit it. What do we look like at that moment that we're doing something that's going to bring the Geula in early? Chaos. Right. That's why one of the greatest tikkunim, I believe any home that is able to be like the, what do you call that family that would sing all the time? The Von, right. Imagine like, does your house look like, what do they call the Von Traps? Traps, right? Imagine that's what your house looks like. Your house was probably like that growing up, no? It was probably, I could see, right. Because you were bringing in Shabbos and, yeah. It's a very, very, very high level, almost impossible level. But the point over here is, what I'm trying to say before is that we have our avoda to do. We're trying to do it to the best of our ability, of birurim. While we're in that mind and consciousness of, I'm working so hard on this, and I know there's another Yidla's heart to be turned on to Hashem, and there's a piece of my heart that still needs to wake up, and there's a piece here of Kedusha to sift through and breathe. All these things are true, and I still have to do it, but I don't think for a second that something is too big for God, that God can't lachrog me'aklalim, can like go out of the klal. And where do we see this? Where did we see this in Jewish history? That something happened way before its time. The Geula from Mitzrayim. There was 190 years cut off from that 400 count. And it ended up being 210 years. So it didn't stop the Jews from forcing themselves to work on themselves and scream to Hashem d'chulei. So that's why we have to always be aware, like while we're learning these things of this is how it's going to be, this is how it's going to be in accordance to the framework that Hashem set up for us in this world. But Hashem doesn't work on our clock and our time. The Ribbon Shleilim is me'al hakol. So I do what I'm doing with a little bit of a wink all the time, saying, I still got more work to do, right? And then the other eye has a tear, saying, but if you really wanted, you could end this now. And that's how we live in this. That's that dance that we live with in this world that makes this avodah of geula that much more difficult, but that much more deep and meaningful when they're both together.
Maybe in Mitzrayim they're Kula Chaya, weren't they on the 49th level of Tumah or something?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you clearly.
Maybe in Mitzrayim they're Kula Chaya because they were on the 49th level of Tumah.
Yeah, but what they end up doing when they're at the state of Kulo Chayav, they started crying to Hashem.
So then maybe they switched it.
Yeah, that's a great example. They were in this place of Kulo. But I'm going to give a kashi on not just what you said. The Chazal tell us about this 49th level. We know about Yidden and Mitzrayim. Chazal are very clear to us that there are three things that they kept. They never changed. Right? Shaloshinu et shmam, leshonam, umalbusham. Their names, their language, and their clothing. So I always wondered, and I'm just putting this out here. I don't have an answer. But it's amazing that Chazal say, wow, we mamash reached the lowest of the low, and yet we still, there were things that were so important to us that we kept. So how bad could have we really been? I don't know.
Also,
I don't know.
Them, there were also lots that did good, like you have stories of Mary, Mary Yochanan,
That's
right. So that's
that goes with what we learned before. It's you can't say,
yeah.
That's Yafa Eliach in the Mitzrayim,
Or what's the power of a name, the dress,
and the language, yeah.
And the language,
yeah.
There's a huge power.
There's a huge, tremendous power.
Human nature.
I think it just means that our understanding of what it means that you're fully chaya, you're fully guilty. It's not really the way we understand these concepts. It just means closer to a world that looks like it's on the brink of absolute abyss of darkness and destruction. That's probably what we mean. But not the way we're saying, wow, we're fully to the dogs. It's lecholiot. And that after the Holocaust, the Rebbe removed from us this inyan of that it can ever be like that again. That's why he rarely spoke about the Holocaust. He rarely spoke about the 6 million. It was all about tomorrow. It's all about forward, weiter. Talk about self-empowerment. Okay, we're going to stop here because there's a lot more to do, but I wanted us to understand that statement from the Gemara was very important. En ben David ba ela bedor shekulo zakai or chayav. I want to give you a bracha with this Rosh Chodesh energy in the air, in the room, to work with avodat birurim, meaning to understand, We're here to do Havdalah. We're here to do separation between good and evil so that the real people of good, which maybe are feeling far, will find a place inside. But there's poison. There's a lot of poison in the middle of things. And it's not just about chayalim that are getting rid of the poison. It's in our lives as well. It's alavai that we shouldn't accept lechatchila, good and bad being together, because that's just the way the world said it needs to be. That our avodah berurim, avodah of sifting through these things, should find new strength and new kochot. We need to be renewed, like it's no one's business, to find renewal in these areas. And Bezrat Hashem, Yitbarach, by the time Hanukkah comes, will be like, the miracle of Hanukkah will be nothing compared to the miracle of whatever we're longing for this year, with the light of the concealed light coming down and illuminating our lives and our children's lives like never before. Bezrat Hashem. Chodesh Tov, B'Salot Tovot, everybody.